Okay. Always nice to launch these things on time. Who's got the nice birds chirping? I like that.
That's Reed.
Nice, Reed.
Well, I got some chirping in mind, but nah, I think that's Reed. Reed is in the woods. We in the concrete jungle. You in the woods too, though.
I am, but I'm hermetically sealed.
There might be. I think it actually might be mine.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. It's very nice.
Look at Reed's stone wall. Look at that stone wall back there. She in the right place.
All right, so get ready, everyone. I'm going to hit this broadcast button, and we're going to be hot for everyone. Okay.
Okay.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. All right, hello everybody out there. Listen, thanks for joining. Wow, first off, we want to say that the response to this roundtable that we've put together has been exceptional. And we've got a lot of people on Zoom, and we've also got a lot of people live streaming on YouTube as well. So just so everybody knows, because there's been a bunch of questions, this will be recorded and it's going to be placed in the vault in our website. So if you feel that you've got to go back, or somebody you know says, oh my God, I wish I would have caught that because I know that Brad and Reed are going to tell me how to make my life better, then go to the website and check it out. These things will all be archived, okay? So since you've all come here to hear them speak, I don't have to give too much of an introduction, but we have with us here tonight, Bradford Young and Reed Morano. I'm going to clap for you guys because I know out there in virtual land, everybody's clapping. Hello, hello. Let's show the love. All right, listen, before we begin, we all as a group, including Reed here, we think it's very important before we get into this discussion that we'd like to take a moment of silence, here today to honor so far 435,000 people worldwide have died of COVID as of today. That's the reported deaths. So that's out there for all of us to think about. And the other thing as well, which is very important, which is coming in the wake of what COVID has brought us, is we also would like to honor all of our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, as well as our First Nations brothers and sisters, whose lives have been taken by the hands of police brutality and other senseless acts of violence here in the United States and all around the world. This is not just a USA thing. You see this all around the world, and people are standing up and taking notice. So we'd like to collectively now in the virtual space, while we're all together, let's just take a little moment of silence for all of that, okay? Thank you. Okay, thank you, everybody. That's much appreciated by everyone involved here that you're watching. So, so it's something interesting, right? It's been at least 100 years since our industry, our professionals, have been sidelined en masse, like we all are today. And this is obviously a brand new experience for all of us, right? Everybody being kept home together at the same time. This is absolutely unheard of. It's never been done in any of our lifetimes. And this is really what we're trying to explore today with Brad and Reed, because they're parents, and there's a lot of people out there who are parents. And, this is a tough industry on people who are parents. And, COVID and the demands for everything that's going on in socially and within the institution of our business is, I think, causing all of us to rethink, right, how things are done personally and professionally. All this time at home for all of us has forced many people within the industry, right, to reimagine what is it going to be like when we go back to work, and what exactly does that mean, going back to work. And we've had times to reflect and do things differently. So I'm curious, and we'll start this conversation going because I know it's going to organically flow. But Reed, first I'd like to ask you, this time that you've been at home, what has your process been, and what are you doing to stay creative in all of this?
Well, when the lockdown first started, basically I was in the middle of shooting a series that I'm doing right now, and so I was basically only 2/3 of the way through that shoot. So I came back from there. And pretty much like a week or two later, I thought I was gonna have all this time, like, you know, we picked up like light. My kid's dad owns like a lighting company, and so we like picked up lights and stuff. And we thought we were gonna like make a movie with the kids at my house, which is on like a lake and it's in the woods. So we were like, okay, we're gonna make a horror film. But as it turns out, I've been like, you know, I pretty much had to start editing the footage that we had shot about a week after I got back. So that was great because I could keep my head in that project. And I pretty much have been editing it up until a week ago. And, you know, I'm going to continue actually until we go back to shooting. So I've been lucky in that respect where I could keep my head in the game. And I've been, you know, working really long hours because my editors are in the UK, so it's remote editing. So it's been a little hard because I've wanted to just do nothing and hang out with my kids more, but you know, I got to keep the train moving, and it's encouraging for everyone on the show, and I'm enjoying it, you know.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's definitely good. That's a different situation. Like you had something to carry into this COVID lockdown to continue with. Now, what about you, Brad? What's been your situation?
I'm not working. I'm working on getting to know my kids, man, which, you know, getting to know my wife. You know, I've been gone for like the last 6 years, you know, so not gone. That's extreme. I've been home, but you know how it is. We're in and out. So when I was on a show in Mexico, well, prepping a show in Mexico, and when all this started going down, I came home. And so I've been at the crib since March 13th. And, you know, a lot of things have transpired since then. You know, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of the whole slew of emotions. So my son's teacher, they were on a Zoom call, and this is after everything started popping off after the murder of George Floyd, and the teacher wanted to know what the kids were feeling, and got to my son, and he said all feelings, and there was a little bit of a silence, like, and she said, well, wait, like, what do you mean? Like, what is there a specific feeling? And he was like, no, I'm having all the feelings, you know, and that's kind of how I feel like it's been. It's been like a whole, you know, that first few days of like, okay, well, what's going on? That fear, that first few days of fear, you know, like, man, I got to stay away. I got to stay away from folks. I got to stay inside. We got to keep the kids safe mainly, you know? And then that whole, like, that next week where you're like, oh, I realized that my whole creative energy, as an artist, my identity as an artist has been defined by somebody else's vision. So then you start having a crisis. like, oh, I'm not gonna work unless somebody gives me a job. And then you're like, oh, wow. So now I got to start figuring out how to make art, you know, figuring out how to like be a cinematographer in dark times, you know, and what's the story I want to tell. And then I tried to force myself, you know, I'm gonna make something. You know, a couple of friends and I decided we were gonna go on that journey. And then, you know, of course, those ideas don't come to you. They don't fall out of the sky, right? You got to wait for them to come and touch you. And, you know, so then you get a little impatient, but then you get that beautiful silence where you're waiting for things to put their hands on you creatively. And then things started flowing, you know, and then I stopped forcing it. And then I just kind of sat still. Once I sat still, man, I realized I had children, man. I got kids. I got 3 beautiful kids. And I have an 8-month-old daughter that if I was in Mexico shooting, I would not know. I wouldn't know her until she was 8 months. You know what I mean? So I'm taking every day, man, just to be with my kids, man, and try to be present, you know, which, you know, I was not able to be as present as I would have wanted to before. So, and you know, I get a chance to, you know, we get a chance to like see, Reed, I'm curious how it's developed for you. I think we may have talked about it a little bit, but, you know, this COVID thing brought a lot of stuff. It brought a lot of stuff to the surface. Like the school system is a joke, man. It's a joke. it's a straight joke. And
it is.
And and I'm like, man, are these kids ever going back to school? Not meaning are they ever going back to school with COVID, what's going on with COVID, but like literally, like philosophically, are we sending these children back to these schools? Like we need to figure out a way to like keep these kids at home and let them be with their parents and their community and their friends. And, you know, people in my community are thinking the same thing, you know, so it's those kind of things come out, and you get yourself handed to you a little bit. But once you get in that motion, man, you realize, man, how much stuff we get handed to us and how much we don't. It's hard for us to activate as filmmakers, activate things, because things are happening for us. But now it's a moment where we got to work hard, you know, keep the family together, keep the love inside the house, and let the kids and your partner know you see them and you feel them, which we don't always get a chance to do. So I'm loving it, man. This is like,
Me too.
this is like,
I don't really want to go. I don't want to leave or go back to work. Like, I wasn't upset when it just kept extending and extending. I was more, you know, worried. I also came back to, I don't know if I didn't tell you guys this, or I did tell you this, Brad, but I came back to, when I got home to my apartment in Brooklyn, I came back to like an eviction notice because it was dated February 28th. I got back March 15th. And no one lives at my house but me, so, and the kids when they're with me. But when I got back, I saw that. I was like, what the heck? They were going to kick out the whole building to make condos. And I wasn't supposed to come back until like May, beginning of May, mid-May or June. And it was like, you had to be out by May 31st. And I would not have seen that. I mean, I'm sure they would have emailed me, but I would have been like in the middle of shooting. And then my building would just be like, we're going to take legal action. We're kicking everyone out. So I had to move to also during this time where I was like, could any more, you know, I mean, really like so lucky, you know, my situation. But yeah, I just wish, you know, I want it to last for a while, because it's like, I feel like I got so much closer with both my kids, even the one who's like bordering on being a teenager. So he's definitely pulling back a little, but you know, it's amazing. It's an amazing silver lining to this insane thing that's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what it is, and what's interesting is it's these moments, right, when there's some seismic shift, when people want to change. You know, so our business has always mirrored society in lots of ways, right? So there's a lot going on now, and I think there's a lot of people thinking about how our business has been run for so long, how we shoot, how long we shoot, how long sometimes it takes to do things. And there's been a lot of discussion from a lot of different people. And a lot of the questions that have been coming in from people are about what changes do we see within the industry, or that, you know, we would like, excuse me, to see happen as we're going back. Now, could you guys say a little something about that? Thoughts?
Oh, I don't know. You want to go? You go first.
Nah, go ahead, Reed. No, you go ahead.
Okay. I mean, I've been working, we talked about this the other day, but I've been working on, the last couple of jobs I've done have been in Europe. So we've had automatically just French hours. And, you know, I know that's not a thing that can work. Maybe that's not even where we want this conversation to go right now, Doug, but
That's good.
I just think about, I've had that situation on all these shoots where I'm not with my family and I'm only with them for certain amounts of time. And it's just like, I was like, this would be so great if only I was going home at the end of the day. And then, you know, I get back to America to be on a shoot where I am at home and I am living with and I have my kids there. And then you know, it's back to like 14, 16, whatever, however many hour days. And, you know, I just think it's I get why we need a certain system, you know, and I care about my crews like more than anything, you know. The only thing I care about more than that is my own kids, you know. But you know, I think that you know, if we were able to do something similar to that, if we were able to sort of take, you know, do the 10 hours straight and do what you know, what we were talking about the other day, it's just people could get, maybe there's a way we can still make it so that our crews can make the money that they need, but we also have a civilized quality of life, because we're not having a quality of life here.
Yeah.
It's a good point. And Brad, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean that's where I am, man. My goal right now is to maintain this quality of life that I have right now, you know, because it not only gives me a lot of time to reflect on the work that I'm doing, but also gives me a lot of time to reflect on the condition of the people I love the most, you know, which it's all right when you're away and you're at a distance and you're feeling all the emotional tidal waves of things that are happening in front of you, but it's one thing to be away versus another thing. It's the other thing is to be engaged, you know.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I think we're in an industry, you know what I mean? And everything's treated like an industry. It's everything's a conveyor belt. It's like in, out, in and out, in and out. And you know, other than the artists and a few, you know, really people that mean well, you know, most is for most people is product, you know what I mean? So the whole idea of this whole idea of getting things done is like it's hyper, you know. Capitalism always shows itself in the process in a very intense way, and the problem is that, you know, it doesn't make it artist centric, you know. It doesn't make it artist centric, and I feel like a lot of stuff that we've appreciated over the last 10 years, or a lot of stuff that, you know, could have been, you know, knocked out of the park didn't happen because there's not enough time, and we are not in a situation where we're always provided with things that we need to keep us inspired beyond just the material, the script, or the actors, or the lighting, or the camera work. You know, there's also a whole other thing that's happening in the background for an artist that inspires that person to make the contribution to a film, make a contribution to a piece of art. And for us, it's very collaborative. So it's not just the folks that are like out in the dirt every day that get a chance to be on a webinar, but it's also the cats in the background who play way in the background, you know, and they don't get a chance. I mean, they're the first ones and the last ones out. Like, at least we get to come an hour later and we get to leave as soon as wrap, you know what I mean? So I'm hoping we can really like, I'm really interested in changing models. I'm really interested in changing, you know, there's a lot of conversation about dismantling structural things, you know what I mean? I'm really interested in kind of questioning the structural reality of how we make this stuff. Cause to me, it's clear that it's not sustainable, you know? And part of the reason why it's not sustainable because it's not family community centric. And we're artists, you know what I mean? We come out of an experience, and that experience is the experience of a community, you know, and nobody, not to say everybody in the community has the same experience, but there's a belief, there's an ethos, there's a culture that a community, you know, stands on. And that's where the arts comes from. That's where the stories come from. And so it's kind of short-sighted for us to not put family first. I mean, listen, you know, just as an example, you know, one of the things that I really loved about working for Lucasfilms is that it was family centric. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like my family was taken care of, and I was able to like stay energized because of that. Now, the result of that in the work, it might be very like this. The result may be so esoteric that you can't see it in the work, and I'm okay with that. But at least in the moment, I was really inspired, you know, because I was able to see my kids, you know what I mean? I was able to put them, at least read a book to them, and have my whole weekend, and nobody was calling me and bothering me, you know what I mean? And that matters, you know what I mean? That matters. And so I'm hoping that we can really, amongst a whole checklist of other stuff, I'm hoping we can like really think about a new model, you know what I mean? A more egalitarian thing, a more sustainable, most favored nations thing, where everybody is thinking, everybody's contribution is recognized, and because of our contribution, we're given time to reflect on the material, so that the next day we come back, we can do what I believe is inevitably a better job. Like, all of us want to do better. It's not like you knock it out the same every day. The next day is an opportunity to do better work. And so you can't do that work. You can't make that contribution if you never have time to breathe, or you never have time to rest. And so for me, this time it's just like, I don't want to go back to that old way. I want to rest. You know what I mean? Like, I want to get sleep, and I want to be able to think about what I've done the day before, and improve, you know?
Yeah, and that's the powerful thing. And you know, we have a lot of young filmmakers who are out there who, you know, really you guys resonate with them. And you know, one of the important things you just discussed there was the idea of teamwork, right? The idea of, and that's a thing that I've always thought was very important, to make sure that young filmmakers understand that, you know, you know, the model has been slowly changing since I've been around, right? The director used to be this person that three people could talk to, and this, that, and the other. Like back in my early days, handful of guys, you can't look at them, you can't do this, you know. But at least now we've gotten to the part where people understand directors are human beings too. They're people. And the idea is the directors that I find that are really great and interesting are the ones that understand this team model, right? Where it's like, it's not a one-man show. And that's an important thing that I think is always good to let young filmmakers know and understand, you know, is that when you're out there, you're not trying to blaze a trail on your own. It is about these people that you bring in with yourself. And another thing I just wanted to mention for young filmmakers that might not know, when we talk about French hours, what we mean is a 10-hour shooting day with no lunch break. This is something that's very standard in Europe and South America. And everyone knows here in the States, we operate by different laws and different bylaws and different operating system. But in most other parts of the world, where exactly as Bradford Reed has said, you know, people like to enjoy their time. So it's like 10-hour, I don't need to worry about breaking for a meal. We'll come in, we'll work 10 hours, and then we go home. So that gives everybody, you know, more time at the end of the day for themselves and their family, you know?
Yeah. I was gonna say, you know, listen, we should recognize that that's no matter what, relative to the masses of the people, we make a living wage. You know what I mean? Most people on film sets make a living wage. You know what I mean? Whether it be the person cleaning up after us, who's a sanitation worker, to, you know, the PA who's running whatever they run for us. You know what I mean? Most people make, relative to minimum wage in America, most people are making what we would consider living wage. So all of this is coming from a place of privilege, but you know, this doesn't dismiss the fact that we need analysis. You know, we need analysis, and I think even more now more than ever, we need the analysis. I've said it before. I've said it some other places that, you know, I think the other thing that I'm hoping that we can do is, you know, I think now everybody's really thinking about building community. Like this idea of building community is really important. And you know, one of the things I know, you know, we all three of us can attest to this, is that, you know, what are we going to do? Because I think we don't have a choice now. We have to figure out ways to like maintain and sustain collective ways of making art, you know, especially for us as filmmakers. It's so collaborative. And the model so far has been, you know, there's a community of filmmakers that are making a film, and there's a director, and that director hires person. That person's empowered to hire, create jobs, create an industry, a local industry for people that would be doing something else with their life. Who knows what it would be, but they're making films, and it's collaborative, and we know how happy we are on set with each other, with our friends and people that we're making art with, and being very impressed. And then those films go to film festivals. At some point, it's plucked from the community and sent off into the ether on their own, and everybody that followed them or went with them or was with them up to that point is kind of left to like fend for themselves, you know? And I think the thing to really stress to young people in this time is that we're not going to be making films the way we used to make films. You know what I mean? That whole model is like, it's about to be dead, you know? And so, and if it's not dead, it's going to be a crippled beast. So we got to really come up with new ways of figuring out how to stick together, make films together, and be, we need to collectivize our efforts, which we have not always been encouraged to do. So I'm hoping that more than anything, we can put pressure to keep ourselves together. You know what I mean? There's, you know, in every city in America, there's a crew of artists who are using motion picture to express themselves, especially young people. And my dream is that those collectives stay together, you know, that they grow and they, you know, they stretch and they expand their understanding and their vision. But it's an industry, you know what I mean? Like we create jobs, you know what I'm saying? In this time where jobs are an issue and unemployment is an issue, and, you know, the people's ability to take care of themselves and their family, you know, what better way to support industry and support people's ability to thrive spiritually on every level, while, you know, we should be asking folks to help support and help maintain these collectives, you know, people that are organized around making film, and they make powerful films. I mean, the lion's share of stuff that we like is made in communities, you know, community settings. So I'm hoping that this time will shift. We'll prioritize that because we have to in certain ways.
That's powerful. That's powerful. And Reed, I wanted to ask you something because, you know, we had a lot of questions come in, and, you know, Reed, I mean, you are a shining example for a lot of filmmakers out there. And one question in particular that I wanted to ask you and share, and I'll read it verbatim because it's a wonderful question. It's from someone we have out there, Arlo Gordon. I fear that I won't be able to financially support my future children if my career doesn't take off at a certain point. I dream too of both being a mom and a director one day. How did you maintain the faith in your talent during the hard times and not let future tripping sabotage your ambitions?
I guess it's a great question. I have when I was starting out, I set sort of not huge goals every step of the way. Like, when around the time when I was starting a family, it was actually the same time I was just hoping and praying I would get a feature in Sundance. I went into everything with blind faith. It's also partially, I think, just my personality. It's not everyone's personality. I know it's not, because I have people in my life who balance me out, who do worry, and they need planning. They need that security. But the most planning I did before I just dove in to have kids was like Googling, I knew I was gonna have to move out of my apartment in the city. And so finding an apartment that, we could afford if only one of us was working in indie film at that time. And we were working on indie features and in reality shows, which can be more of a way to sort of keep yourself afloat while you do the creative projects you want to do in between those seasons. You can have like a regular, that's a place where anybody really can work. And I'm not saying it's just that it exists all over the place, at least in the main cities, and they always need people, and there's so much content. Yeah, it sucks if you can't do I waited for, it took me about 6 years to find a feature that was the type of genre I wanted to shoot. And that was this movie called Frozen River. And I basically, probably for that 6 years, every single day, I was on Craigslist crew gigs and Mandy.com, just applying to every single job.
Woo, you bringing back that pain, boy. I remember that.
So painful. And I did everything on earth under the sun while I was doing that until I got my first steady gig, which was a reality show. So I did so much for free, and the person who's asked this question is probably beyond that, but I did a lot of stuff I didn't want to do. I shot I'm not saying, but sometimes you have to make trade-offs to do the other things in life you want to do. And I would encourage people to do that if they have to. Take the secure job, even if it isn't the favorite job, if it's important to you to have a family and at a certain time. And everybody's goals are different and everyone's needs are different. And I don't think everyone needs to have a family, and I don't think it's for everyone. And I think the people that do shouldn't be afraid to. They're not going to get forgotten in the industry. It's better than ever. At the time when I was having kids, my youngest son's turning 10, it was very much less accepted. But I just brought my kid, I was shooting a home improvement show, literally, where there were table saws, paint fumes, everything. And I just stayed on that show and operated the camera, and with my, up until I was 8 months pregnant. And then when my son was born, I brought him to set in a little bassinet and made my sister come to set and watch him.
Wow.
And we took the kids all over, then we took the kids on all these shoots. Not everybody has that same ability, but I think now it's more open, but we have to make it even more open. But I think, you have to sometimes go through a less desirable moment for the security of your family to get to, but that doesn't mean you have to give up what you're doing. And before you know it, you are just back in it again. I stayed, when I had my kids, I basically took 6 months. I took a month before they were born, and then a couple of months after they were born, and then I was back at work. It was hard, but now I feel like I'm straying away from what the question was.
No,
you're on it. I mean, it's about family and what you've had to do to continue to chase your dream and still have family, you know?
I just was like taking it one step at a time. I wasn't like, I didn't come out of film school and think I could be a director. Actually, I came out of film school thinking I have no idea how people direct, but let me just at least try to be a DP on a feature. There was very simple goals. And then once I started DPing a couple features, it was like, or when I first came out of school, it was actually, let me first try to get a job that's paid.
Right.
Any job. And then it was like, let me DP a feature. And then it was like, okay, now maybe I could get a steady job. And then it was like, okay, maybe now I could get a feature that people actually see. Like, I need to get a feature that goes to Sundance. And once I got the feature that went to Sundance, then I was like, I want to get another one. But then people saw it, and one thing led to another. And once your work is out there and you have a particular thing you bring to it, or you've worked with enough people in your community, your film community, people will continue to call you until you tell them to stop calling you.
Right.
Well, that's, you know, that's a very valuable lesson, because I talk to young kids all the time, and I say, you know, nobody starts out in this business saying, oh my God, I'm going to get rich doing this. And nobody, like what you're saying exactly, the little baby steps. And I always tell people this one thing. I go, the film business is a series of concentric circles. You start with a little tiny web, and the more you work, the bigger it gets. The more you work, the bigger it gets. And before you know it, you've got this big circle, and you've got all these people on the inside that you've somehow or another spent time with over the years. You know, it's literally one of the few businesses in the world. Like, I've been doing this 25 years, and I look back and I go, oh yeah, I did have a career, you know. But it's not one of those things. It's so amazing when you say just one step at a time. It's like, you know, I think that's something everyone comes out with, these huge step goals they want to take. And I think that's more detrimental than, as you just said, let me just take little steps, baby, you know, little steps to get there.
Yeah, and another thing I would say too, to add to that is, and I know because I've talked about it a lot with females in the industry who've asked me, because they saw, you know, me with the kids and whatever on set, and just like, you're working long hours and then you come back and then your kids are like hanging on you. And, you know, when they were little, I would take them with me, but they're like, it's just, there's never a good time. And how do you know when it's the right time? And I was like, I got news for you. There is never a good time. There's really never a good time. When I decided to have kids, it was basically right when I shot that first feature that went to Sundance. So what ended up happening right after that was I couldn't get an agent for a while because I was pregnant. So after I shot Frozen River, it had some success, and I got, you know, calls to kind of go to these meetings. And I remember sitting at a table in a conference room. And I don't know if people would know I was pregnant or not. I was like 4 months pregnant or 5 months pregnant, and I was wearing like a baggy shirt. But I think they must have known, they knew, because they were like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I was like, this is like, people really do ask this question. And I was like, well, I see myself shooting, and I wasn't even in the union or anything yet at that point. But I just was like, I see myself shooting bigger movies, you know, and exploring new genres. Why? Like, you know, like,
right.
I think they were wondering if I was just going to go and be a mom. And admittedly, like, you know, everybody's different. So somebody might have kids and then discover that actually brings them greater joy than being on set. And I think you got to follow your heart. And sometimes you need to take a break in life and be with your kids to be creatively rejuvenated. I think, you know, to have that quality of life. I think it was painful to go back to work after having kids, because I wanted them, I was afraid they wouldn't know who I was, just like what you were saying earlier, Brad, that you just have a baby daughter that you wouldn't have known her until she was 8 months old. And it's heartbreaking. And I was worried my kids weren't going to know who I was, and I wasn't okay with it. And, you know, it takes a lot. Anyways, it's very emotional, you know, it takes an emotional toll, but like, you can do it. All you have to do is just sort of set realistic goals. Like, I'm going to go back to work in 8 months, or I'm going to go back to work in 3 months. And, you know, you can't, nothing is a guarantee, but you also that's the beauty of life. Like if you have the ability to have kids, take that opportunity if you want it, because there's a lot of people who are desperate for that who can't.
Right.
You know, so I would say don't ignore that possibility if it's something that you want, just because you're worried about getting out of the game. And I was that person, but I was also kind of bullheaded and spontaneous. And I basically just like Googled how much a nanny cost, got an apartment that was super cheap in Bed-Stuy, and that was 3 bedrooms. And then I was like, okay, we're going to get a nanny and we're going to figure it out.
Right.
It was very, you know, spur of the moment decision, which I really wanted at that time. And so then, you know, I didn't get the agent right away. I lost a couple features that I went into interview for when I was pregnant, but I just kept going. I think that's the real thing. You can't, if you really love it, you won't give up. But if you don't have, you know, you have to have that spirit of knowing it's not going to be like the you know, it's not an instant trajectory. The whole journey was an adventure for me. And it was so long, you know, I didn't shoot my first feature till, like I said, 6 years after college. And I mean, shoot my first feature, I went to a film festival. And then I didn't, and that wasn't for a lack of trying. I was a temp secretary for a hedge fund so that I could work the hours I needed to and take whatever short film away. I shot a friend's film that was like about ninjas so that I would be able to use his camera for free whenever I wanted. And you know, I did that on my weekends, and I was a waitress, and you know, you just do whatever, you know, whatever it takes to get it done. And I think I was just enjoying, I never imagined in a million years that I would end up here in this position and having a conversation with, you know, a legend like Doug, and then, you know, Brad, who is like, you know, just a superstar. I would never have set that goal for myself because I'm a realistic person, but I just have a blind faith of like, it's going to lead me somewhere good because I just like doing this. And I just was enjoying some of the steps I didn't enjoy, but they always led to another step that I did. You know,
were you always, were you always, I'm curious because like my regard for you, that's the reason why this is happening, is because I was like, if I'm gonna be in conversation with anybody, I gotta holler at Reed, because I'm just so curious. Like, you just really, it's like we're watching you, you know what I mean? We're watching how you craft, I've watched you craft all of these moments, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know you directly, I knew you through your work, and literally the cumulative value of your growth is mapped in every film that you shot. It's like, it just got better. It was crazy. It was just like, it got better and better and better and better. And then you were like, okay, now I'm directing. And then it wasn't like, okay, now I'm a director and I'm just gonna direct this little thing. You directed something that blew folks away. You know what I mean? So I'm just wondering, like, just process wise, were you subverting directing by shooting? Meaning that later you knew in your mind, you were like, I'm a director. I just need to like get this cheese and take care of this family. And this is a good way of getting this bag. But ultimately at the end of the day, this is like, I'm not about this. Cause that's a pretty, I mean, that what you left behind getting that bag is pretty significant. There's a lot of residue. And then, you know what I mean? Like, what's the process? And now you're directing, continue to direct. You're a working director, a very successful working director. And you're also like, every now and then you get in there, you shoot and you direct. And then when you do those things together, there's also like, it's felt. So I'm just curious to like, what were you planning? Like, during all those moments, what were you saying? Were you at the temp agency, at the hedge fund? What were the conversations you were having while you were waiting for the day to end?
Just literally sitting there, like trying not to get yelled at, basically. I think when I came out, first of all, that's like the highest praise ever. So I'm just gonna file that away in my brain and think about it later.
It's true though, it's true.
Yeah, the admiration is so mutual. I what was I thinking about? Honestly, there's not, it's going to sound weird, but I didn't have like a long-term plan. But when I went to film school, I basically thought I would write and direct because I didn't think I was technical. And I've told the story a million times, but I realized when I got to film school and I had to make the films that I was directing, I was like, I don't really know what I want to. I wrote my whole life until I got to high school. And then I stopped writing. And then when I got to film school where I could just make, where I could just make anything, I was scared. And I felt like, I think what was happening in my head subconsciously was all these other people looked around me, looked so confident. They all know what their story they want to tell. And they're only 18 or 19 or 20. And I'm like sitting there like kind of feeling inferior, like not kind of, just feeling inferior. And like I'm in my brain, it's just kind of like, I'm just trying to stay afloat in college because I went to undergrad and I was just trying to figure out like, how do I work this, ARRI SR2 or whatever, basically what happened was though, is it just seemed less daunting to me to go and to shoot the movie, but also I was drawn to it. I can't explain it. I just saw what the DP was doing and I was like, that dude is the coolest dude on set. It could have been like a little crush at that time, but the guy holding the camera, and I've always I was never like that before. I wasn't a sporty person or anything like that in high school. I was literally like not that person. And I was like, suddenly just, it was as if the thing that was inside me that I didn't know I had, this need, I didn't know what it was until I had to be on a set and see it. And I think I was drawn to cinematography. And I thought for a long time I could just be happy being a cinematographer because I loved it. I love going on people's adventures. I still love shooting for other people because it was just a way, but it was a way in for me into film telling, storytelling in a visual medium. I think it was a great way for me in particular to learn because it gave me confidence in how to tell a scene visually. And so when I was starting out, I wasn't really thinking like, oh, I'm going to be a director and then a mom who's a director and then like all these other things. I was sort of thinking, I don't know if I'll ever be able to direct. Maybe one day I'll direct something, but I never thought it would go that well. I never thought it would go well. I just thought I'm going to make my mistakes. Had a very realistic sort of point of view. And when the time came to direct, which actually I didn't seek out, it came to me because I'm sure it's happened to you too, Brad, where people come to you and they're like, you should think about directing. We have a great relationship with actors. You treat actors well, you respect your crew. It's like sometimes the DP is the person who can be the shining example on set of what the leader should be, just because they've been on so many sets. And part of that is knowing you have to treat your crew. Your product is only as good as happy as your crew is. And sometimes that's more important than anything. In the end, that really is more important, is that every day you go to work and everybody's happy, because I don't like feeling when people aren't. And I can't live with myself. I worked for many a director that seemed to be totally fine living with themselves while they made the crew miserable. And that, but that's not my style. And so then when it came to me to have that responsibility on my shoulders, it came to me a few times before I actually finally said, yeah, I'm going to try it. And there was a lot of factors that went into why I didn't want to do it right away. I think I was scared because I think as a DP, just for me, just hiding behind my directors a lot. Even though I was doing my best work, I wasn't trying to hide my work, but I felt safe in the hands of someone else being responsible for everything. And then I think there came a shift in time where I started to have more and more opinions internally and realizing that no matter how well I did my job on someone else's movie, ultimately I was not in control of how well it would do in the end. And that could be heartbreaking too, I think, for a DP, a plight of a DP or an AD, or anybody in a position on a set that believes in their movie. And I think, for me, at a certain point, I was just like, you know what? That was the other thing. It's like, don't be scared to take a step to do something. And that sort of applies to all the things we've talked about today, but I was like, I'm afraid I'm probably going to suck at this. People are going to tell me to keep my day job, but that's okay because I love my job. what if I hate it? What if I can't communicate with actors? What if I can't get a good performance? I felt in my gut that maybe I could, but I also I had advice from a lot of people being like, oh, you have to speak to them in this weird code and like all this stuff. And like, but really you just have to be a human being. And what I realized was it was life experience that I was missing. So by the time I decided by the time I felt comfortable to say, okay, I'm going to try to direct something, it wasn't like a goal I had the whole time. It was just sort of like a sudden realization of like, I read a script and I was like, that moment resonates with me.
Right.
Meadowland, it was a moment where the main character is in the car and she finds the cookie from her son who was missing, but it's like a year later. She finds the cookie in the seat and she's so excited when she finds it, she actually eats it, but then it's gone.
Right.
But that was being a parent. What being a parent did was make me feel like I had a point of view.
Right. Wow.
That's powerful, and it's really interesting. Are you talking? You segued into that transition because it is the questions that a lot of people have, like how do you make that jump? How do you know you're ready? And I mean, and you touched upon it all there. I mean, there are a lot of people who are curious in your mindset. Questions that we got in was what was your thought process to make that move? And I mean, I think you laid it out for everyone, and it's so interesting because for me, when I started out in the early 90s, the cinematographer was always the Svengali, right? Because he had these tools and these things. And I remember when I was a young kid, I'd be like, what's he doing? What are they looking? And, and it would be the only one. And of course, it's different now, right? Where you almost see we'll talk a little bit about the technology, Chef. But back then, it's like, yeah, I mean, we got to trust that thing's going to look great. Because right now, on this little shitty 9-inch monitor, it looks like, we wish we could get the Met game on here. It's terrible, but, so, and then sometimes it'd be like, and then it would be like 2 days later, you'd go and you'd watch dailies. You'd be like, how the hell does that happen? It was like, literally, they were Merlin, so, I mean, and still are in a lot of ways. And I find it even more it's very interesting because where I've seen the cinematographers progress is from being this Merlin-like figure that really just dealt with that to being storytellers now. Like cinematographers, are more and more so involved with what the story is. How does the camera tell the story based upon what's on the page? And I remember, in the late 80s and the early 90s, early in my career, it would be like, okay, sometimes the camera operator set up the shot with the director while the DP was, figuring out, where the exposure and the shadows was and this, that, and the other, and talking to his AC. It was such a very different thing. And I've seen cinematographers become these storytellers that are so important to a lot of directors, especially directors who are like, okay, I can deal with the actors, tell me, what do you think visually, how we're doing this here, So, it is amazing you making that transition. I think it's just natural because I've come across more and more cinematographers such as yourself that really are storytellers.
Right. Yeah. It ain't about the story. It ain't about nothing, honestly,
No.
Like, yeah, when you get to that point where it becomes less and less about what it looks like and it's about what it feels like, you know what I mean? And sometimes I used to think that there was a direct bridge between what it looks like and what it feels like, but then I realized that that's not always the case. You know what I mean? I think the thing about what we sort of underestimate is the audience's ability to connect to the meta of what we give them. So sometimes they're not even connecting to the image; they're connecting to the process or the steps it took to get to that resolve crystallized thing on the screen, and that we are listen, every frame is an extension of our story, you know what I mean? That's the reason why no cinematographer, I don't care what people say, it's like you can bite my style, not me personally, but I'm saying you can appropriate and bite people's style all you want, but it's like you're only going to arrive at what your ancestors have given you anyway, you know what I mean? And that cannot be jacked from you. That is sewn into the fabric of who you are, and it can not be snatched. And that is how we move forward. That's how we resist. That's how we make images. And so I agree. You know what I mean? I agree. I see something coming out of this new generation that is, I'm literally not looking at where the light's coming from, because the light is coming from what you see on the screen now. It's like those tricks are gone. You know what I mean? We're using less light. It's less precious. You know what I mean? And it's more about what feels real, what feels authentic, what's immersive, what's mapping my mind's eye. And that is so that people can make you remember your grandmother, or that smell of your father's car, or you know what I mean, the smell of your grandfather's carpet, or you know what I mean, the smell of your aunt's perfume. Like those are the things that people are trying to capture in film now. And that story of me, I don't have to tell you that's my story. I don't have to tell you that's what I'm doing to you, but I know that's what I'm accessing every time I turn on a light or turn a light off, turn it on and turn it off. You know what I mean? It's not about, I want it to be dark, or I want it to look good. It's like, I want this to feel good. I want it to feel right. And, and that's that thing that we got. Speaking specifically as a cinematographer and read it, you don't have to even access this. You know what I mean? You can be like, no, I'm not gonna. But it's like, speaking as a cinematographer, you know what I mean? I think that's the thing that I think that's the thing that is the missing link between us and like a total fulfilled, euphoric experience. You know what I mean? Like, I have musician friends, I have musicians I don't know that I love. I love watching, and when I see them perform, I see them reach a certain level of euphoria. And in a sense, it's not any different. It's a group of people in a singular space making a contribution to give this complete resolved feeling, the sonic thing. And that is like, you just take the sonicity out of it and you put it into film terms, and that's what we're doing, right? And oftentimes we're like, and I think this is part of the collaborative process, so I'm not saying it has to be, this is somehow interrupts what we do, but I think that how often does a director say to a cinematographer, like, not that I don't know what I want to do with the scene, I need you to help me like figure it out. Not that, that's one thing. But how many times does a director say, I see in your eyes, you need to fulfill something. I see it in your spirit. I see it in the way you've been walking around set for the last 4 days. I see you need some healing. Take this moment right now to go there. Like, let's spend the extra whatever hour for you to like feel that euphoria. Because I know directors feel it. You can tell us. You can tell. I haven't directed anything, but like, you can tell us like,
Yeah.
that you know what I mean? Like that thing that when your hair is like, I can count on 2-3 fingers how many times that's happened to me. So
I never interrupt that.
no. Go ahead. Go. Please go.
I'm going to say, I think I know what you're saying. And in the things that I've directed where I've worked with other DPs, I've never once stopped a DP from doing their process. And I've always said, take it as far as you want to take it. But that never really happened to me when I was DP. And I think that's why I say it to my friend, to my, my collaborators, because I understand sometimes it's hard. You get stuck in a thing, or it's so close, or you're trying to create a place that you want to go, a place, you have a thing in your mind, it's not there yet, but you feel that you're on the cusp of it or something. Mm-hmm. And it could be as simple as just one little detail that you haven't yet figured out. And yeah, there is, it's interesting how it's that correlation of, I can definitely tell when something's up with my right-hand person, Right. And I don't ignore it. I'm like, go straight up. I face it head on. I'm like, what's going on?
Right.
What do you need? That's how everyone should be on set, really. Like, not the attitude of assuming that what a person's, you know, dealing with, but more of like trying to accommodate rather than have everyone accommodate you.
Right. The most amazing cinematographer, big brother, friend of mine. He lives 1 block away from me, literally 1 block away. Peters. He's an incredible cinematographer. He's like the first cat that like said to me, we would be talking about some young cats coming up, and he'd be like, "Yeah, well, that cat is sensitive. That's the reason why." And I was like, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a Cancer, so everybody talks about me being sensitive. You a Cancer too, right, Reed?
No,
Oh, we are Pisces. Well, there you go. Aries, okay.
Like the opposite, basically.
Basically. But yeah, my growing up, oh, you're so sensitive. So it's like that thing I'm trying to avoid. But you know, that's my like now. That's like, and I have a Cancer. So I have a son who's a Cancer. You know, now through him, I realize it's a superpower. So I accepted my superpower. But like Sean is like the first cat. First of all, Sean is off the charts. His astrology game is crazy. He'll tell you about somebody before.
I'm very into astrology now that I've passed the age of 40. Now all I care about is what's that person's sign. I don't know.
Exactly. And
that's like my one form of discrimination.
Right.
Work with anybody, but like I am into astrology, so maybe I need to talk to Sean.
No, you gotta talk to Sean. You also just gotta talk to him because he's inspiring. And he said he's like the cat is just like, I'm getting back to the whole sensitivity thing because he made me aware, even though I feel like I was already making strides or whatever. I was not strides in the sense of, you know, anything else other than beating my personal best, but like every film growing and seeing a difference. And you know, I get to a most violent year and it's like, okay, now I'm seeing some things happen. I'm feeling something. And then and then I'm like in conversation with Sean more and more often. And he says to me, yeah, well, you know, that cat's work is great because that person is sensitive. And I was like, okay, that's the thing about cinematographers that sort of encapsulates everything that we have to bring to the table. We have to bring a certain level of sensitivity to the table. So you know how it is with a child, you know, kind of bringing it back to the family thing. It's like when you have a sensitive child and you, two things happen, right? They either super, super perceptive and they get it. Like my 6-year-old is so gracious, you know what I mean? Like he's super gracious, like, and you know, it's because of my wife, but his spirit is that he's a gracious cat, you know what I mean? And he gives a lot of space for me to go out into the world and try to get that moment, get that feeling, but also, you know, bring home the money for the almond milk, you know, but he like understands why I'm out in the world doing what I'm doing, you know? But he's shown me a lot about being vulnerable and opening up, you know? And so it's that whole thing of being sensitive enough to accept and understand how life has some compromises, and even in the process there's some compromise, but also at the same time, never apologizing for your sensitivity, because it's that thing that we have to, and this is beyond astrology, this is past the astrology thing, but as a cinematographer, like our sensitivity barometer has to be off the charts. And so learning how to balance the two, you know what I mean? Yeah. Accepting compromise when you have to make it, and not being so sensitive about that you destroy what you're already building, but at the same time being sensitive enough to know when something's standing in the way of you realizing your full potential, which is basically all we're asking people to do, is like give us an opportunity to reach full potential. And I think that's, as a parent, I think that's the thing I struggle with a lot is, and I think this is the thing I got to contend with is I'm never going to reach my full potential as an image maker if I cannot be with my family. You know what I mean? Like it's never going to happen. And so right now I definitely have those moments where I'm threatening to choose between the two. But I also know that because I spend a lot of time, I have a lot of spiritual investment invested in the cinematography thing, that if I'm not shooting, I'm probably going to be disruptive for a while in my house because I'm not doing what my hands and my eyes were made to do. You know what I mean? I think that'll go away, and if I'm just a gardener or whatever I decide to do, like I'll find my space in that. But I definitely think it's really important that for me, it's really important that I try to find a balance and not be so decisive that one has to be. I don't want to say this, that maybe I've already said it, but I need to tap into, which is what I'm trying to do now, tap into making the process when we go back more fulfilling by reflecting on this family time that I have and all the things that my kids are teaching me right now, and that sensitivity, that ultra sensitivity, I'm gonna bring back to going back to set, which is gonna be so, so difficult, honestly, that may render something that I've been waiting to happen, you know what I mean? And so it's a strange time, but at the end of the day, if it's not about, we said if it's not about stories, not anything. If it's not about, it's Francis Ford Coppola, it's The Godfather. If it's not about family, then what's it about?
Right.
What's it about? I mean, that's what we do when we make films. We're making a family, right? So if it's not about family, then what are we doing?
And I think if you're taught, we're like taught in this industry that like, when a job comes, you got to take that job. There's no other alternative. And like, yeah, for a lot of us, there isn't, because we were living paycheck to paycheck or, forever, or still are. And I think you get into a habit, even when you get past that, to think, oh, I got to almost take every job. And you don't really know what you don't know what you've lost by doing that. And sometimes you don't have a choice. And at least the very least you think is, okay, well, at least I love my job. I'd like to assume that all the people that are watching this right now, they're watching this because they work in film or they want to work in film and they love their job. Yeah. Most people who work in film, I think, do love their job. That's something we all have in common. We're very, very lucky for.
Right.
And I always say on set, if I see someone who's grumpy or consistently grumpy or making trouble, I'm like, you don't like it? You don't have to be here. Don't spread my happy-go-lucky crew, I think that's the thing. You could do anything you want in this industry, and you could do your skill in this job somehow. But there is that mentality of you have to take every job that comes, and you don't know really. I didn't really know what. I had an idea of what I was missing out on, but I didn't know how good. Like having this time at home, I didn't realize that I actually went to another level of connection with my children that I never had. Maybe since they were babies. Since they literally were breastfeeding, because that's with our connection. I mean, this might sound crazy and people will judge me, but like, I have a king size bed upstairs and my kids sleep with me. When I was little, I always wanted to sleep in my mom's bed, and she was like, no, get out of here. Like, very smart. My mom and I are super close, so it's fine. But she never let us sleep. She occasionally would, but she also had 5 kids, so I could understand why she was like, I can't let one of you in. It's gonna be a domino effect. But me and the dudes will sleep upstairs in the bed, and yeah, we get into arguments who gets stuck in the middle, and always Fletcher gets stuck in the middle because he's the littlest one. Right. Sweating and gets angry. And lately Casey's older, so he's been trying to sleep in his own room. They have their own rooms, Right. The attachment, there's like a new attachment forming where like at night I don't even let them go to bed. This is gonna sound really bad, but like they're up at like, we have them up until like 2 a.m. sometimes. Not have them up, they just don't go to bed, because
Don't let my kids hear that. Don't let my kids hear that.
Every minute I just want to be with them. And I realize I don't like putting them to bed early, even though I've been trying to watch like some more violent movies. Finally, the other night we just put on The Five Bloods because I was like, screw it. And they were like, guys, like, and we were like, okay, cover your eyes, like, you know, before their face, and they're like, next time we watch something that you'll let us see. And we're like, you really don't want to see that one part, like.
Right.
But what I'm saying, I'm not very eloquently, is that I have an attachment issue, like, and I get really depressed when I have to leave them to go to work. And no matter how much I love my job, and I know I'm like so lucky, more lucky than most people, because I love my job so much. And I'm so excited to shoot that film and tell that story and work with my crew, which I always have, make sure I have awesome people around me. And I love my crew, who become like another family in most of all the best scenarios. But when, no matter what, even though I know I'm going back to like my posse, I don't want to leave. And I get really in a mood. I get really depressed. I get resentful towards my producers, even though I love them, you know.
Mm.
But I'm like, you're taking me away from my kids. Why do I have to come early? Now we're gonna have to come even earlier with the 2-week quarantine and everything. And I get angry because, and I realize it's very simple. It's just because I just want to not leave those dudes who, you know, I don't want to lose these moments with them because they're getting older. I mean, my older son is basically has like a mustache, you know.
How old is he?
He's 12, and we call him, I gave him a new nickname. We call him Total Mustache. So
He'll be like Doug soon.
He's taller than me. Anyway, long story short, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm just saying, and I was looking in, I don't know how to put this into words, but I was like, Fletcher and I just have moments, and Casey, where we just stare at each other now. Well, I've been home, you know, during this time, and I just get like, we just stare at each other. And sometimes I'm just sitting with Fletcher and he's working on his computer, I'm working on mine, and he'll just be like, he'll be like, guess what, Mom? And I'll be like, what? And he'll be like, I love you.
There you go. Woo! I love that one. My 6-year-old he did not like that. Now he's all about that.
Yeah.
Now he says, I know what you're gonna say. Yeah, we gotta savor this moment, man. We gotta take full advantage, you know what I mean, of this time we have, you know. It's important. It's important, you know, really important.
You know, and the thing is that in this time, in this day and age, you know, technology's changed so much around all of us, and obviously the way that social media is, right? And the two of you are so different, opposite ends of the spectrum. I mean, in terms of Reed, you have a very huge following, her social presence, you know, a lot of people peek into her life a little bit, like what she allows them to see because of, you know, her footprint in social media, where Brad, you're the complete opposite. You're crickets in the social media world, right? So I'm curious, and a lot of people have written in these questions. A lot of people are curious about what you guys see in this day and age, pros and cons in you know, for both of you, in the situations you're in social media. Reed, why don't you start first?
Well, I noticed one big thing. If anyone's been following me for a long time, they might notice that I used to post a lot more photos. If I'm away from my kids and I'm scouting, then I'll post photos. If I'm when my kids were young, I would post a lot of photos. When I was a DP, I had the brain space to post a lot of photos, and now I post a lot less photos because I don't want to post a photo unless I'm like, I take pictures not as I don't get to take pictures as often because I'm doing so much work all the time. Like, I'm not trying to complain. It just like is the reality. Like right now, especially after this conversation, I'm just like, all right, maybe I'm just gonna like not take any meetings or phone calls or anything for like 2 weeks straight, and just have like coffee talk with you and Brad like every few days.
Yeah, I'm down.
Yeah, like I think, you know, the problem with social media right now is I like looking at it, but I also realize it sucks up my time. So I'm not on it as much. I am on it when when I see something important on the news. I like to post it on my stories but then you get worried. I definitely have a bigger audience fan base that they don't maybe all have the same beliefs. So I have pissed people off before. Then I try to keep it just photos, but then you can't help yourself. And then you're like, well, if I have this many followers and I don't say something I believe in, then what's the point of having this many followers? Like, I don't want to be neutral anymore. I just want to say what I think because I believe in what I believe. But, as far as the social media thing goes, and, Doug, I'm getting off track, there is a big responsibility with it. And, I have a very high level of standards of what type of picture am I going to post, what am I trying to say here? My kids don't really let me take pictures of them all that often anymore. So that's why that's gone a little dry on that. But yeah, I think it's about having the creative brain space to do that. And I think what's nice as cinematographers on something like Instagram is when it's about the images that the cinematographers are posting and not about all the other crap. But then you just come into a time period where your priorities shift, and then you want to make sure that everyone who's following you knows what knows about this thing that you saw, just in case they need to know it.
Yeah.
I don't know what, I don't know if I'm really answering the question, Brad, but talk to it.
You have. The idea. Listen, it was a tool for you, and then it's evolved into something different now as you have evolved. That's how I see from what you're saying. You know? Brad, what about you? Since you're as we said, crickets.
Yeah, when are you gonna get on? Just kidding. You take over my account.
You inspired me. I'm getting on tonight, man. I'm getting on tonight. I have how do I say this? I'm gonna try to keep it light, but I'm dead ass serious that I have a healthy, I feel like it's healthy. I have a very deep sense of apprehension and mistrust for our government. And this comes from not just some loose cannon conspiracy theory things floating in the air. Like, I just feel like I see, for me, COINTELPRO is real. Counterintelligence program is real. You know what I mean? Like, that was a program to design to extract information from us in spaces that we felt safe. And that information was ultimately used against people that we love and adore and who were here to really help us live our total full human life. And I don't think we are at a point in this American project where this full vision they have about democracy is able to take its hands off certain spaces. And when the whole social media thing dropped, it was like the old man in me. And listen, I come from a family that's had to like wrestle and tussle with that, before I was born. And so I just always felt like if I need to make moves, or I need to kick something off, or I need to pivot, or I need to do something that is for the best interest of my community, my family, and my loved ones, like, I don't want them to know where I am. I don't want them to put my hands on me. Not seriously. That's like, I just don't trust it. And I'm not saying, I told you so. This is like the aha moment, I told you so. But like, look at all of the ethical issues we're having about people aggregating your data. Listen, I'm not in social media, but I got like the other 95% of my body is engaged with a digital avatar representation of, you know what I mean? It's not like I'm off social. I'm not on social media and I'm totally off the grid and I don't swipe a credit card or buy things off iTunes or use Google Sound or do all of the Siri. Like, I'm checked in. I'm just as much of a slave to that nonsense as everybody else. It's just the social media thing just felt like it crossed the line because it gave, I felt like it would then give people too much access to my DNA.
Yeah.
And I respect it. Hey, listen, my wife is an organizer, a radical medical professional, a women's health advocate. She is about these children. She is about bringing these babies into the world. As a midwife, she's about raising children in a particular way. She's about making sure she's having shared experiences with other mothers and mommies who are doing the same, trying to raise their children. Most mothers are trying to raise their children in radical, progressive ways, but like organizing mothers around making sure these children are taken care of in times and places where it doesn't seem like they're going to be we know they're not always looked after. And so I see what my partner's doing on social media, and they're subverting. I mean, they're not asking permission for anything. They do what they got to do, and they're not muzzled. They say what they need to say. They're radical people. They came out of the organizing world, and they're not afraid to share these ideas in that form. So I know that there's a space to be subversive and really get what you need to get out of it. But I'm it's like all the old dudes I grew up with who were just like, my uncle is he might be listening, but he's probably not listening. But my uncle's like an organizer. He's he's a revolutionary. You know what I mean? Like, and he used to take me to meetings and like organizing meetings, and they would, before the meetings would start, they would say, hello. There would be people that were part of the organization. He would say hello to our organization members, and he would say, and hello to the FBI, because all the FBI agents were literally sitting in the back of the hallway. You know what I mean? And so like, for me, that's like, I'm probably gonna be that old dude. I'm probably gonna be that guy telling my sons, like, did you see that guy at the grocery store? Look at the way he was pulling the milk. You know what I mean? Like that. I know that's in me. I have the capacity to have that, be that person. That's mainly why I don't do it. Because I really do want to give them. Yeah, and I also felt like Instagram, I probably could have gotten into, but the whole Facebook, Twitter thing really repelled me. But the Instagram thing makes more sense to me, especially as an image maker. And I can't front. You know what I mean? Like, I have a lens company and we have an Instagram presence, you know what I mean? And I don't have my hands on that because I don't know how to curate it. I don't know how to use the app. So there's no way I would be able to do it. But, it was a space for us to express to people our company ethos, and that we're a company that's connected to more than just film. We're a company that's thinking about lenses and film technology in a more musical way, and that these are the things we like. And this is the kind of cinema we like, and we were able to put that up on an Instagram, and really, which is so important for us as a company, connect to young people who we know have the same taste, or have the same, who love Jana Comfort and Haile Garima and Andrei Tarkovsky and Kathy Collins and Agnes Varda as much as we do. You know what I mean? Like, it was important that we let folks and young people in the world know that we're a lens company, we some old dudes, but we like the same cool stuff that young people like, you know what I mean? And that those things transcend generation, quality is quality. And that's kind of what we needed to communicate to the young folks we want to be in conversation with about optics. And that's not something you can write in a letter and send in an email. The way you can do that now is you got to put it on Instagram. So I get it, I understand. But I think with the Instagram thing too, it boils down to what you said, Reed. It's like, I mean, I bought like a little Leica Q2 before the whole thing went down, and I've been shooting some stuff. I had a moment during Ramadan where I was up every morning before prayer, like shooting moments, and they're on my camera, you know what I mean? And I'm sharing them with one friend, but I'm so not sure about the images that they're just sitting in my camera. And only one friend, and has really seen them, and he and I were, and Sean Peters is the person we have an exchange, and it's probably not likely that I'm gonna shoot something with my phone and put it up. You know what I mean? I'm gonna scrutinize.
Photos right now that I've taken of the place that I'm in, and like photos I've sort of stolen, but I won't post any of them. It was like crazy light, like a whole bunch of times, and I was like, nobody wants to see that.
Right.
I just like, my standards are like too high now, and I'm just like, yeah, that's beautiful, but also it's shit. And you know, I'm not gonna post it. And maybe but also there's like, you know, you can use it by, you know, now I'm mostly using my platform to do. I'm definitely like posting a lot of my food that I'm cooking on.
Interesting.
I just like to do that because I have a friend that I'm directly sending those messages to, and she knows who she is.
Right.
I believe I could cook, so she's, you know, out of her mind over it. So anyway, but I think it's true though. We take all these photos, and then you're like, it's almost like you really be taking the photo for. You should be taking the photo for yourself.
Right. That's it.
Like,
yeah.
Everyone else thinks, okay, fine, yeah, okay, that, so only a few people like that photo. It's like, who cares? I hate that whole system. I'd rather just never know. I'd rather post what I want. But then also I'm more protective, like what you were saying before. I'm more protective of what I post now, because you don't want people to know too much. I don't post locations as much anymore, or if ever. Right. I have that same paranoia. I don't have an Alexa or a Google Home for those exact reasons you were just stating, because I know for a fact that they are being, that all the information you ask of them, you know, even though my kids, it was mostly my kids just saying like, I hate you, Alexa, or I love you, Alexa, or, you know, you go on a date with me, Alexa, or, you know, whatever. I wouldn't have that in the house because I'm so paranoid. But also weirdly that I still have this Instagram account. But right. I post less information. But yeah, I have been contemplating deleting it, just getting rid of it as much as one can. I don't even know if you can delete Instagram anymore, really.
That's crazy. That's what I'm saying. That's crazy.
Go off the grid.
Yeah, I just feel like it doesn't leave much. I feel like it doesn't leave much to the imagination. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like I always get the analogy that, you know, at a certain point in American history, slave rebellions were common. They were happening all the time. So much so that Jefferson Davis would write letters to congressional members, and he wouldn't call them slave rebellions. He would call them Indian wars, because he knew that if you called them slave rebellions, it would draw massive fear amongst the slave owning population. And they would realize that the whole game is over, like that the system was falling. But none of those slave rebellions were organized on social media. They were organized quietly around fireplaces.
Yeah.
And around a fire, and that the people around the fire agreed that they would never open their mouth. You know what I mean? And I think, you know, we're in a moment right now where we need a little bit of that. We need a little bit of subversive, like, check out, get off the grid. Let's start having some private conversations about how we're gonna make these changes, you know? And again, I say that coming from like, that's me that's not checked. That's me that's not on it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's almost like saying I didn't like the movie, but I didn't see the movie. You know what I mean? But like, that's just like I got a feeling. I got a feeling about the film. You know how everybody says, I'm not gonna see that. Yeah, I'm not gonna see that movie. Or you're talking about the film. Like, I saw the trailer and everybody's, you didn't see the movie, you just saw the trailer. You talk shit about the film. But
yeah,
I kind of feel like, but on the other hand, I'd say the balance is that, you know, my wife is not playing around. They don't play around. They get organized on that thing. And they young people, you know, they get organized on it, and they figure out a way to do what they need to do, and not and that thing not be interrupted by folks that will try to interrupt their efforts. And so it just strikes a note with me that I'll never get there. I'll just never get there with it, because I'm just too ingrained. That thing for me is just too real for me. It's too crystallized in my spirit. But you know, you go see the movies I shot.
That's how people can get to you. That's how they know.
That's how you know.
It is. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, like one of the things I had shared with you guys earlier today was, how our industry treated the last pandemic that came through, and it was amazing to me the historical article how the industry, that's what created the studio system, right? Because so many movie theaters went out of business that were individually owned, mom and pop, a lot of them owned by women and minorities, and it was an independent filmmaking scene in that vein that went on. And then opportunists saw the way to consolidate, right? And that's what created the distribution for the studios, right? The theaters then coming out of the pandemic when theaters were closed for about 3-4 months and a lot of them went out of business. There was a consolidation that then created the studio distribution system. And I think we all think, and everyone's trying to figure out how to be a part of this new change that we want to see. Like we've talked about, coming out of this, how the idea of how the work life should be, the balance of work and home life, the idea, there's lots of ideas coming around now. I mean, here's the truth of the matter. We've been declining in terms of how the theaters have been a distribution arm for the last 2 or 3 years significantly, right? The streaming services have really taken over eyeballs in a lot of ways. We're probably going to have one of the major, whether it's Regal or AMC, is probably going to go bankrupt out of this, and it's going to be another push in the direction of how the distribution is coming around. So we're on the precipice of another seismic shift in how our industry is run, and it's going to be interesting. People such as myself and you guys and others who have people who listen to us, and younger people, when we can say to them, hey, now's the time, right? Not just socially, but professionally, to maybe change a little bit of how the business is handled and run. I mean, I think that's something interesting to see how and what that shift can look like. And nobody has the answers just yet. I think a lot of people are trying to figure it out. But I'm telling you, there's a change coming in a lot of ways, more so than we're just talking about how, people want a better quality of life at work. And that's important. That's massively important. But I think that's going to lead to other things. I really do.
Well,
I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Reed. My bad. Go ahead.
you go first.
No.
You, Reed. I choose you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, I think it's like, I have a lot of issues with the way things are run. I have a lot of issues. I had issues when I was a DP and not directing, and then I have issues now as a person directing and producing and studios and formats and rules and standards. And, obviously we need standards and we need these sort of protocols, but, I don't want to follow all those rules anymore, and I don't mean the kind of rules that protect us on the crew. I mean the rules that the rules that restrict artistry and restrict creativity and put put the business before the art. And I do think that there is, what you put out there is what people come to expect. So if you're going to put out the stuff that is big, all the stuff that costs a lot of money, and maybe there's less effort into the story, but it's a lot more VFX and crazy and exciting. And believe me, I like those kind of movies too. But like, where's the place for the cinema? The reason why most of us who do what we do actually got into this in the first place. Like, we're being used as tools to generate the most profit. And of course we want our films and we want our, TV series and everything. We want people to see them. That's the whole point. I realized the other day, I was like, the only way people are going to see my movies is if I shoot like a big budget male action movie,
Yep.
that is the wrong attitude, obviously. That's not true. You know, like you, but how do we even as female filmmakers break the glass ceiling? Because everyone thinks if you're a female filmmaker, you only should tell stories about females. But then why do male directors get to tell stories about males and females?
Right.
And why are all those unspoken rules like rules? And so anyway, I'm always trying to just break out of all those rules and make new rules, even though they're like, no, Reed, that's the rules. I mean, obviously, all the things on my slate I have coming up, they are like, you know, mostly female-led stories because that's what I like to tell and people need to see more of. But I also think, why does a woman, if she directs a superhero movie, why does it have to be Black Widow and Wonder Woman only? Like, why can't it be like, oh, you know, that kind of thing? And I don't mean to get into the gender part, but I'm just thinking about like a lot of the restrictions that are put on us as artists, and not just about the gender, you know, parity thing and everything, but is coming out of that studio system. It's coming out of executives that are not just like old white men, but like women too. And they're afraid to lose their jobs. And that's why we're not getting to do the bold things we want to do. And they don't want to put the money behind it or put the P&A behind it to promote those things. And now I'm just going off on a complete tangent right now.
But I mean, that's all valuable stuff, really. And I mean, and Brad, what do you think along those lines?
I think, you know, I mean, listen, I have some real feelings about they're not private. I didn't have the Instagram. Like, I have some real feelings about the structural reality in which we make films. Like, I have a real issue with them because I feel like their point of departure stems from an illness that we have. Our society has an illness that we actually love having a relationship with, and we're having a hard time shaking it. And we're having a hard time. We've had a hard time shaking it for 400 years. And so we're now at an interesting moment where we are really trying to unpack it on many levels, and people are getting organized in a way, in a really intense way. You know what I'm saying? And as a participant, but also as an observer, it feels very present right now. It feels very crystallized, and I'm very happy that things are might be moving in the right direction. I say might be moving in the right direction. But at the same time, I'm also like, I have no energy, and I have no desire to do the work for people. I have no desire to try to teach people these things. I want folks to go out and take the initiative and do the hard work. And I also understand that what's probably going to be required of us in these times, which has always been required by filmmakers who never believed in the studio system, never had a desire to go there, but had a desire to be artists within the film space, is that we are going to have to start making decisions where we're not going to be able to shoot projects. If we want to change the structural reality, we are not going to be able to shoot these projects, these tentpole projects, because they will not afford us the opportunity to be in harmony with the gatekeepers and the material that they present us. So if we want different kind of story, alternative kinds of stories made in a different structural way, we have to do it ourselves. And we should not waste one more second asking folks who don't have knowledge of self. They don't know their own history. They don't understand what's even being said to them right now. They don't understand why the country's on fire. So you can't expect them to understand why it's important for them to invest in stories that give us the crux, the breath of human existence. They're not interested in it. They haven't been interested in that since birth of a nation. They're not interested. You know what I mean? They're very clear about letting us know, I'm not interested in your story. I'll give you a few tokens to go out and tell those stories, but after that, I'm not interested in those stories. And so I think we have to, if you still want to make films in that space, and I'll go back to make films in that space, but you have to be real sober on what it's about. You have to be real sober on what it's about. But if you're not making films in that space, you also have to be real sober about what it's going to be like for you as well, which is that you're not going to be making 2 or 3 films a year. You're going to be doing like my mentor, my friend, the person that's inspired a lot of people in my community, Haile Garima's made over the last 20 years, has only made 5 films, but they're films that rock the world. They didn't just rock America, they rock the world. You know what I mean? Anybody that's bear witness to this man's films is shaped by his films. And he made a choice early on coming out of UCLA, 2 films at Critics Week at Cannes, won Bush Mama and Harvest 3000 Years. He made a choice after winning Cannes, when all of Hollywood came to grab, he made the decision that he wasn't going to do that. His decision is that he was going to come to Howard University and teach Black students how to be filmmakers. And he paid the price. He paid the price. He was not able to be as prolific as Spike. He was not able to be as prolific as John Singleton. You know what I mean? But if you ask Ava, Barry, and a bunch of other folks who inspire them, they're gonna say Haile Garima. You know, and so, but he made the sacrifice. He made the choice. So I have an optics on that. So that's my conflict. My conflict is that I know what's right. What's right is that we should never ever ask these cats to give us an opportunity or never take $1 for them to tell our stories, because they're not interested in the stories that we're interested in. You know, they're interested in, they have a very specific business proposal that needs to be carried through. And oftentimes it's at the expense of our own humanity. And I think we got to get real sober on that. And I think we got to get real sober on the fact that this moment is presenting us with a very interesting opportunity, which is that we need to collectivize ourselves. We need to gather ourselves in community. And I don't mean just like the hypothetical community. I mean, we need to get ourselves on a 5 square block radius of one another and start making films together and start telling these stories that we need to be told. We know have needed to be told, and we need to do that now, because as Reed said, when the studios come back, they're not going to be trying to tell these little personal stories. They are going to try, and as you said, Doug, they are going to try to get that bag. They're going to try to get that money. And our little tiny stories are not about in the theater space. Streaming is a whole other conversation. I feel like we need another 2 hours for that. But
yeah,
I'm talking
that'll be the next episode.
Next episode, right? But in the theater space, it's going to be about tentpoles. It's going to be about superheroes. It's going to be about big explosions. It's going to be about things that we go to tell every now and then. Again, we agree to go in that space and we understand what it's about, so we're not conflicted about it. But I know that we're not, Reed and I, Doug, the 3 of us, we're not going to fill up. I'm not filling up a career with that stuff. That's not happening. You know what I mean? I do one of those every now and then, but I need to eat. My soul's got to be fed, and those opportunities are going to have to come from us.
Yeah.
And
You get a thought, Reed. What was that?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I think I was just going to say, it's like, it does feel like right now, in this moment, obviously, the first things that start getting made when people are able to, in a way that's safe. It feels like right now there's an opportunity, like out of this experience, there should be some kind of an artistic revelation, like a renaissance of some kind, you know? It's not, this isn't the like craziest, worst thing that's ever happened in history by far.
Right.
It's just is what is happening in our lives right now in our lifetime. And it's like, we should take what we're all learning. Everybody's probably learning so much individually, and like,
Right.
You know, what is interesting right now, just from a businessy point of view, is that all those streaming, all those platforms, they all need material right now. And they're all going to need material when we come out of this, before those big things are made. And so, yeah, like right now would be a really good time to bang out that low budget independent film that take, you know, maybe there's a way to approach some of those streamers and say, I want to make this thing and make it for a number, and it'll be ready for you and you'll be able to put it on. And, you know, there's some things that are happening right now that there is an opportunity for that. And then there is the idea of the collective, which I think is super important. And I think right now, no, everyone is always afraid to speak out against the thing. They don't want to bite the hand that feeds you and all these other things. But I just think, yeah, like we need them, we need the money, but they need us. They need our brains. They need our talent and our skills. And everybody brings something different to the table.
And they're real clear on that.
Yeah.
They are real clear on that. They are very clear about what they need to extract from your spiritual creative soul in order to propel themselves into trillions and trillions of dollars.
Yeah, and then they'll extract it and then they'll go in and be like, and then they'll go in and put in their own ideas. And you're like, it just doesn't work that way.
They don't want to do the work. That's it. At the end of the day, this is the question we all have. They do not want to do the work.
They can't. And then they try, and then they, and then it becomes muddled. And I think the reason why some of the greatest films came out of, when we were young, in the 70s and the 80s, like those people were backing the artists, and they were putting trust in the artists, and the perspective on that has changed. Nobody wants to support an artist unless 10 other people, like have vouched for that art. Nobody takes a bold move. Nobody's taking a risk. It's money, and that's understandable. But why does everything have to be that huge to be considered, a huge success? And it's also about like the popularity of it and who's gonna advertise that and put that out there. And you could sell your movie to this company, and then you sell your movie to this company, and oops, sorry, if phone was coming, call was trying to come in. Anyway, you sell your movie to this little company thinking they're going to do right by you, and then like your film just disappears into the ether. And then if you're not one of the cool kids and you don't get to that company,
right,
it's like, what can you do? So yeah, like on a level of messing up the system a little, like I didn't like how I have to you can't, if you want to have a filmmaker make a big movie, or you want to have a filmmaker perspective on that, and then you're not going to let the filmmaker see that film through to the end, then you wasted all your money that you paid for that filmmaker, because you're diluting the filmmaker's vision because you knew better. But then why hire that person in the first place? So I guess what I've always been saying and complaining about to other filmmakers is like, why do we have to do it their way? Like
because we haven't formulated an alternative. Because we haven't formulated the alternative. We also not doing the work. You know what I mean? We also are very clear about who controls the means of production. We may not have the language to express it, but we are very clear on who controls the means of production. And so our whole process is colonized. So we haven't figured out a way to shake off our colonizer. And that's a difficult proposal, and it's painful, because what it means is that while we were working with the colonizer and we're giving the colonizer everything they want, we're greatly rewarded. We get a check, we get to take care of our families, we get all these things. But as soon as we realize that that's not feeding our spirit and we pivot the other direction, we have to accept the fact that, number one, we haven't formulated a new model, so we're walking into a deep, dark hole. And number two, we are going to have to live without things. And so this actually, the silver lining of this moment is that from a very privileged space, that stuff has been equalized. And this is the moment where we have the silence and the quiet time to sort of reflect on basically what we've been saying, Reed, from the jump, which is like, the crux of our spirit and our soul is our family. We can't even spend time with our family. So what makes you think, you know what I mean? Like we don't even get that. So, but now we have it, and we have to use, I think we have to use this moment of clarity, this moment of meditation to fortify a new process, a new structural reality. Like right now, white supremacy is on blast. It's on blast. And why it's on blast is because it has determined the structural reality. What it did was it sold a bag of lies. It said that only the owned would be paying. but the owners thought that they would never be paying. But that's never going to render itself true. It's just a matter of time before that whole thing blows itself up. And right now we're looking COVID is interesting because COVID put capitalism on blast. It put the whole American project on blast. No speeches had to be made when you look at the numbers, right? Poverty is the evil. And the people in this country that are stricken with poverty mostly are Black and brown people. So it put the whole thing about equality and all this nonsense, it put it all on blast. And it's also what it's also doing for us as filmmakers is putting our whole process on blast. We ain't getting checks. We're not, most of us, some of us are, but most of us not. And so now we have to take this moment to contemplate a new reality. Like, I'm super conflicted. Like, I'm very conflicted. The movie I was prepping, I know I need to make that film because that film was headed in the right direction, right? But there's some other stuff that I'm really conflicted about going back into that bucket of stuff. And like, I think this is the moment where we have to do the hard work to say, we going back to ask our aunts and uncles to cut us $12 checks, every one of them, and that's what we make the film with? At least we'll be free.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? At least nobody's gonna ever say you can't be with your family because you're gonna make it with your family. And your kids are gonna be welcome on set. Like, to hear you say you were bringing your kids to the set, like that just, like, my whole thing with you. I already had you up here, now you're in the, you're in another, because like for me, I know what that takes. I know what kind of negotiation internally, or maybe it didn't, but I know what's against that out there. You know what I'm saying? But the reality is, there's another reality we could create, which is, it's never a question. Like, of course, cats are bringing their kids to set because we ain't doing nothing but making movies.
Right.
You know, we're making movies. We're not asking them to come to like brain surgery.
Yeah.
They come into a set where cats are sitting around on their cell phone, eating donuts, making art, and laughing and enjoying being with their friends. How come the kids can't be on set?
Anything they can't see, it's a closed set anyway. So it's
Well, listen, I got to tell you guys, this has been phenomenal. What you guys have been sharing, I mean, the stories and your inner truths. I mean, this has really been amazing. And I think, you know, it's been really inspirational for a lot of the people out there, you know, that have been listening to us, because this is the kind of stuff where it's like people aspire to understand, like they think it's like this veiled secrecy, the people who do these things. And, you know, you're both, you know, at this very high level in your field. And it's just wonderful for you to be able to share these moments, these experiences, and these thoughts, you know, with everyone out there who wants to listen. And that's the beauty of this medium right now, right? It's like the ability to be like, listen, you want to come and see what we've all got to say about this thing that, you know, people want to knock the door and get into. It's like, you know, hard work, cream rises to the top, stick with it every day, keep going, you know, and, you know, try and tell the story that you want to tell. I mean, I think this has truly been great. And I appreciate your guys' time. I mean, thought we were going to go 90 minutes. We're over that. And we talked about maybe there's another conversation with you too. I think there is another conversation with you too, without a doubt. And one thing for everyone that's left here, Darius Kanji, Bradford, Darius, good friend of mine, is coming on next Tuesday. Bradford was needling me to say, I want to talk to you and Darius. So we're going to do that. And Reed, we're going to keep you in the loop because, I mean, you've been absolutely fabulous, and we'd love to be able to get you on another conversation sometime.
Please.
I'm happy to. I was just thinking when we were all three talking, I was like, maybe we could just make it like a morning show a few days a week, and we could just talk about anything. And then
why not?
Nobody will show up, but like we could at least talk to each other. And if they want,
yeah, the three of us is great.
Yeah. So, so this has been great and very helpful. And obviously, you know, for you guys who know, and those of you don't out there, we've got, you know, Maria's been helping us a lot on putting all of this stuff together. And she's kind of a very important behind the scenes person that's been helping me make sure that we've got all this stuff happening, as well as Aaron and Matthew that have helped kind of coalesce this whole movement and these conversations that we're starting to have. So we just wanted to just say hello to the fellow people also who sit around the film roundtable currently behind the scenes, but Maria's gonna take the center stage at some point next week. But listen, everybody out there in virtual land, thank you for coming and enjoying with us. And I agree with Reed. Maybe we can have a morning talk show. Just got get with the morning events. Once everyone gets their their children thing out of the way. You know, since mine are 16 and 14, they get me out of the way. That's how it works. We're over you, dude. Like, we don't care.
You're almost free. You're almost free.
I'm almost in what I call the expensive zone. All right, listen, it was great. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you, Reed. Thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, much love, y'all.
Goodbye.
Peace.